Right. Okay. So good evening, good afternoon, and also good morning for you, for all of you. And today we are discussing something basically away from us, but actually very relevant to us as well. So today's topic is Sri Lanka's economic and political problems are deeper than we think. I mean, that is quite true because we know we have a globalist situation at the moment in Sri Lanka, and beware of agenda of the globalist elites. So this is our topic, and this will be the speaker today is Dr. Rima E.Laibow. I will give a small introduction before we carry on, and also as usual, I'll also show why it's relevant to us. So the today's talk mostly is going to be in English, and maybe I'll talk one or two Sinhalese words as we go, so to explain what we are doing. So the we actually, for us to survive in the world, we do have to now look beyond the borders, because many things are now globalized. There's a global interest, and everybody is trying to encroach every other's uh, ownerships, etc., etc. So there's a big competition that's in the world. But we should know, we should understand these things to keep away, not getting caught to these strangles. Now, Dr. Rima, I will do very short introductions. I've written it down here. She's a medical colleague, a medical graduate from New York in USA. And she's been running a clinic in New York, but she closed this and then started working on more humanitarian work with with her late husband, General Bert. Now, she will introduce you to more into this subject that her husband was also US intelligence chief, and therefore he was also more aware of, most likely, what else was going on in the world, and other than just on his own job. So the agenda, it seems like there is a globalist elites who want to establish a global control system using the United Nations as a tool, like the World Health Organization, International Monetary Fund, and NGOs such as World Economic Forum, in advancing inhumane depopulation agenda. You would have seen this kind of thing propping up, particularly during COVID, that certain people were advised not to take the COVID vaccinations because their effects are designed to be long-term, not against COVID, but beyond that. So we don't know exactly, nothing was proven, but we are still waiting to see. So usually, as you know, the attempt by the whistleblowers, just like here, Dr. Rima has experienced this very well. And it's not that easy. You get discredited, you get sometimes punished, and also you will feel threatened, you feel threats. I mean, we have experienced this, especially if you are working in national interest agendas. But she will talk about this a little later. I want to really explain the meaning of two words that that may come up in this discussion. Recently, we've started using the word oligarchs. Now, oligarchs is, what do you mean by oligarchs? Oligarchs is a very rich business leader with a great deal of political influence. So they are politically connected, particularly with reference to individuals who benefited from the privatization of state-run industries. Now, this started from Soviet Union. This is a Russian term that's come as oligarchs. When when the Soviet Union collapsed, certain state-run industries were privatized, and then there were a lot of people who were getting extremely rich by basically exploitation. So the philanthropists is a person who seeks to promote the welfare of others, especially by generous donation of money to good causes. Now, this is quite can be tricky as well. The why and how such people can donate so much money to others is sometimes a question, and whether it is done with actually for welfare of us or not is also important questions to ask. So these two terms will come up this discussion: oligarchs and philanthropists. So, but look at us now. I have shown this slide before, but this is Sri Lanka today. We got 2.2 million people, and there is this wall, but there is no wall there. This wall is actually referring to our constitution that's been tinkered now 22nd times since 1978 to make sure that the 225 or the rulers will remain rulers all the time, and the workers will remain workers who will be paying all the time. So this is kind of design that has come through. If you understand which took me 3 years of discussion to understand what's going wrong. And the election systems manipulated in such a way that only these 225 means our parliamentarian will remain ruling with the 1% of the population who now earn 30% of the national wealth. So you can see that there are links. I mean, we have extremely rich people in the country, but do you see anything they are doing like major company, major production company, anything like that? But they are very rich. So you can say maybe they are also oligarchs, and we are ruled by a few at the moment. We can see that it's happening, and the people are being harassed by so many laws. For example, for the last 2 years, we have about 70 new laws being passed. Are they to help them, or are they to suppress us on this side? Is the one that you have to ask the question to see why are so many laws coming up. Sometimes this was done by Hitler as well, that certain rules were made so that certain things done by these groups who are on this side, on the elite side, are actually legitimate. You might see it wrong, but they are legitimate so that they can carry on doing all that. That's why some of the laws are coming in. So beware of that as well. Now we have an election coming in, and I think it's about time that everyone think about it. This is why I will use some singular words. Election එකක් දැන් අපිට එනවා. We have to really think exactly what we want. So I will say some words. Now, should we continue to be a hodgepodge of kleptocracy? Now, kleptocracy කියන්නේ let the corrupt politicians enrich themselves secretly, steal state funds to enrich themselves, and sell our national assets. That's basically us at the moment. Or should we revert to a monarch? ඒකට ඉතින් රජපෞලක් ඕනේ. Now we need a රජපෞල, but there are self-claimed රජපෞලers, but I don't know whether they will be qualifying to become a monarch. Or should we remain as an autocracy? That means one political party holds decision-making powers, like Egypt, Hungary, and Pakistan. Are we moving that way? We can decide in the election, so your individual decision matters. Then remain as an oligarchy. Now, at the moment, Sri Lanka is also an oligarchy. Autocracy by the elites. A few individuals or families, as I said, currently have 30% of national wealth. 1% of the population has 30% of national wealth. So prefer a dictatorship? Okay, let's go for it. In that case, extreme form of autocracy by North Korea like China and Cuba. Or should we have a plutocracy? So the society is ruled by the richest. Now, should we go for that? Or we work to become an anarchy. Now, a state of disorder due to absence of non-recognition of authority. In that case, if you want anarchy, we are moving that way at the moment. We can support the current 225 and we'll get there. Or should we become a liberal democracy again? If that's the case, we will have to fight for the freedom of the more ordinary people, vote for the new people, take control and chase the oligarchs. Now we have a lot of work to do if we want to go there. So it's your decision, the voters' decision will ensure where we are heading very soon. So the election is coming as well. Now in that situation, it's probably better for us to understand what's going on. And then, then today, I have posted something where one of our seekers, political leadership seekers, have got an AI assistant as well. So you have to talk to the AI assistant and then register, and then you will be able to ask questions from the AI person about what the leader is going to do. Now, imagine how far we've got. Okay. So the Dr. Rima's presentation will be more like a Q&A. I have 4 questions and she's got slides as well. So what I will do is I will ask the question and then carry on as it is. Okay. So first of all, I'll ask from Dr. Rima, can you briefly introduce yourself and your late husband, General Bert, and who was the head of US military intelligence? So I'll stop there and maybe ask the next question thereafter. And Dr. Rima, thank you for joining again today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And by the way, I found your introductory remarks extremely useful, and they fit very well with what I was planning on talking about. So thank you for having me. It is obscenely early. Nonetheless, I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Who am I, and why am I talking to you? And I want to thank Dr. Pree for inviting me. That was very kind of her. I am a physician. As you heard, I was graduated in 1970 from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. I went to medical school in order to become a psychiatrist. That's thanks to my very disordered family of origin. I had to figure out how these things work, and that's as good a motivation as I know for becoming a psychiatrist.
I think you got muted somewhere.
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes, we can hear now.
As long as the dogs do not bark, we're fine. If they start barking, we'll just have to wait. So I was saying that, okay.
Yeah.
I graduated from medical school in 1970. I went to school in order to become a psychiatrist. I did my postgraduate training in child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry, and I am also trained as a psychoanalyst. I have been a social activist since I was a child, literally since I was 12 years old. I was thrown out of my first political group for wrongthink when I was 13. So I have a long history of raising questions and saying, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. And the system, whether it's the system of the group that threw me out when I was 13 for asking the wrong question, or whether it's the government system, the system does not like to be questioned, seeing it as a threat to its authority rather than an offer of improvement. And that is something that we are facing now in extreme terms through censorship, through the suppression of discussion, debate, reality. The United Nations and the World Health Organization together, and as you know, WHO is a subsidiary service organization of the United Nations. It itself makes no independent policy in the same way that the IMF serves the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization does. These are subsidiaries And it is very important from a diagnostic and a treatment point of view, which of course is my academic training, to identify the root of the problem, not just the symptom of the problem. So I'm not going to be talking about how bad the WHO is or how bad the IMF is. I'm going to be talking about the fact that oligarchy and predatory philanthropy have been fused to form tyranny, global tyranny. Sri Lanka is one target, but one of 194, because every country in the world is a target of that tyranny. Back to who I am. So I had a private clinic in New York State with 2 offices, one in New York City, one in suburban New York. And I was practicing drug-free medicine. Yes, there is such a thing as drug-free psychiatry, and there is such a thing as drug-free medicine. In my 54 years of medical practice, I have never written a prescription for a pharmaceutical. I use nutrition, detoxification, frequency medicine, neurobiofeedback, and similar tools which do not involve pharmaceuticals, which have a great place in the ICU and the surgical suite and the emergency room. But in my experience, nowhere else. I know that's heresy, but it's been my experience for 54 years. Because of that, uh, in I met my husband, who was murdered, who did not just die, who was murdered for the work that I'm going to tell you about today. And similarly, there have been quite a number of very serious attempts on my life, because the oligarchs who have merged with the predatory philanthropists don't like the truth. And I was about to say before that the United Nations and its agencies have 3 categories of truth to be suppressed or information to be suppressed. One is what they choose to call disinformation, untrue information. One is what they call misinformation, information which is oriented incorrectly, has the wrong interpretation. And the third, a new one, is called malinformation, information that's true, but conflicts with the approved narrative. Those are the 3 official categories of things you're not allowed to say. Do you hear the danger? Do you hear the intellectual, cognitive, communication tyranny of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation? Well, in approximately 2002, I was seeing patients in my clinic that I was at that point running with my husband, General Bert. It was my license, but we ran the clinic together. And people from all over the world were coming to my clinic because they had been told there was no hope. They had to live with the pain, go home, get your affairs in order. You're going to die. There's nothing more we can do for you. So they would seek out a doctor like me who had other options to offer them. One of those people was a head of state. I can't tell you who. Those of you who are physicians or lawyers will understand about medical confidentiality. She was the head of state. And she casually one day said to me, you know, it's almost time for the great culling to begin. And I said, the what? And she said, culling, C-U-L-L. I said, I know the word. What are you talking about? She said, the culling of the useless eaters. And upon my questioning, she quite casually and comfortably informed me that the plan was to cull, as in culling a herd, to cull 90% of the current world population. I challenged her on this. I questioned her. I tried to understand what she could possibly be talking about. And then after she left, and by the way, her physical malady was cured, But after she left, I started doing research. I did not learn that there was a well-established, long-laid plan to get rid of most of the population of the planet, biologically transform the remnant that would be left alive, and take total control of every aspect of the planet. I did not learn that from General Bert. His intelligence, and he had every security clearance of which he had ever heard, his intelligence was compartmentalized. He was a willing, useful, brilliant idiot, as Stalin styled people who serve the order of the state. When he learned what my research was uncovering, he and I decided that we needed to close our practice of medicine and create a strategically focused system to derail the globalist agenda, which indeed is now moving rapidly forward. So in 2004, he and I closed our practice of medicine, drug-free medicine and psychiatry, and we sold our house so we would have some money, and we created the Natural Solutions Foundation, specifically to derail the globalist agenda. We have no ties and are beholden in no way to any industry, to any government, to any force other than the force of truth and the force of the people. Despite that, of course, there's all kinds of propaganda about how we work for the CIA and blah, blah, blah. Untrue. So I am a voice of truth as I see it and as I understand it. After his murder, on his birthday, by the way, after his murder in 2017, I continued the work that we had begun. The work is exactly what we're doing here at this obscenely early hour where I am, which is in Arizona, to empower people with information, with tools, and with deep comprehension, as you are doing. We are facing global extinction as a species, entirely planned and laid forth 140 years ago. What kept and I will talk about how we got there in a moment with a little PowerPoint presentation. The structures that have been created to convince us that we need a global tyranny are about to spring their final trap. On September 23rd of this year, the United Nations, which, by the way, is merely a club of countries. It is a private club. So Sri Lanka, and this is enormously important, but I'm skipping the body of what I'm going to tell you to get to one of the conclusions. Sri Lanka has been told, the government of Sri Lanka has been told, the people of Sri Lanka have been told that they have a relationship with an organization which includes treaty obligations. That organization is the United Nations, which is actually the unelected nobodies. In fact, according to international law and usage going back thousands of years, in every tradition, treaties, and this is tremendously important, can only be concluded between equal sovereign states. Contracts can be concluded between sovereign states and corporations. The United Nations and all of its subsidiary organizations, WHO, IMF, UPOV, every one of them is a corporation. Therefore, Sri Lanka, like the United States, like Vanuatu, like Australia, like every country in the world, has no valid treaty obligation to do anything that the United Nations tells it. A treaty I will remind you, is an agreement between two sovereigns, and there can be other sovereigns lined up, between sovereign entities, also known as countries or nation states, to make their laws match on a particular issue. That is a treaty. There can be no treaty with the United Nations. Therefore, your water rights, your property rights, your education, every aspect of your country's decision-making is in fact not bound by anything that the United Nations, the unelected nobodies, tells them that they must comply with. Now, how did we get there? I know you have more questions, but who I am is somebody who is bound and determined to not see humanity enslaved after being decimated. Decimating it comes from the Roman practice of killing 9 out of 10 of a population that it was dominating, so that there was one left, a tenth of the population was left. We are on the edge of intentional decimation, 90% of the population to be killed, as Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum tells us is extraneous. We cannot allow that to happen. So I'm a person saying no to that, and yes to humanity. I think that might answer the question.
Thank you for that kind of insightful explanation. Do you want to take any questions from the audience on that particular thing and go to the next question? Is that okay?
I would rather go to the next question because we haven't gotten to the meat that I want to share with you.
So let's go to the next question. So I'll just show it briefly. So the next question is, you have been making a hard to believe claim that Western governments are puppet governments controlled by billionaires who want to depopulate the world. When and how did you get to this position? I think you explained a little bit, but anyway, we can listen to more. Yeah. Thank you.
The question you've just asked is almost correct. If you take out the word Western, put the slide back up. It's a good one.
Yeah.
If you take out the word Western and substitute the word world, the claim that world governments are puppet governments controlled by billionaires who want to depopulate the world, then you have a correct statement. Now, in 1992, at the Rio summit, and by the way, in 1992, there were 174 countries in the world, sovereign states. Now there are 194. In 1992, 174 sovereign countries signed on to Agenda 21. Agenda 21, on which I've written a book and which I've studied deeply, stipulates that the world's population will be reduced. They have very fancy words for it. And by the way, in the language, the dystopian language, the Aesopian language is a technical term for it, of this way of communicating, words take on special meaning. They are jargonized. So when you hear the word sustainable, it means the destruction of all of the support systems, which is the opposite of what we think of as sustainable. But the word has been given a special meaning. When you hear smart cities, that's a surveillance city. That's a surveillance community in which what's smart is the surveillance information gathering, not you, but the city's intrusion into every aspect of your life, and so on. So the Agenda 21 program, which has been upgraded and put on heavy steroids and created into Agenda 2030, stipulates a level of control that is hard to believe. Most people cannot really wrap their minds around a plan this comprehensive and this anti-human. One of the things that Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 stipulates and requires is that there be a bio-digital convergence. Now, I don't know what your religious or spiritual background is, Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Baha'i, whatever, Jewish, whatever it is, or simply spiritual or none. But most people would agree at a pretty profoundly understood level that humanity doesn't need to be redefined by oligarchs. Every government in the world, go on your government website, you'll find it, has a page on biodigital convergence. That's a United Nations concept. Biodigital convergence is the fusion of you and your children and your neighbors, your mother, everybody, anybody who's left alive, with the machine, the singularity. The oligarch required intrusion and redefinition of you at the DNA level so that you are capable of literally being controlled, being surveilled, and being used at someone else's whim. This is the level of slavery that starts at the DNA level and moves outward. We are being told that governments are redefining what it means to be human. You'll find a Sri Lankan government page that says biodigital convergence. We are redefining what it means to be human. That's a level of surveillance and control that every oligarch, every tyrant in the world has lusted for. And now, through science that these predatory philanthropists have directed and funded for the last 140 years, we are almost at the point where that kind of control is possible. And let me say, and this may offend or shock some of you and may not shock others of you, let me say that the COVID vaccines from Pfizer, from Moderna, those are the RNA vaccines, from AstraZeneca, the adenovirus DNA vaccines, pseudo vaccines, because they do not, in fact, do what vaccines have traditionally been supposed to do. These vaccines, as some of you understand already, are gene modification vaccines. And the new layer of vaccines that are coming, the RSV vaccines, the new flu vaccines, the new childhood disease vaccines, etc. These are all gene modification, CRISPR designed intrusions into the genetic functioning of each and every cell of the body, redesigning what it means to be human. This is part of the long-laid 140-some-year plan that I'll talk about. I became aware of the great culling, as I said, when a patient casually mentioned it, not as a problem, but as a positive event about to begin. Now, I don't think it's positive. I don't imagine you do. And then my research led me to understand that this was indeed a worldwide program. The United Nations, although we're taught from childhood that it's a benevolent organization, the United Nations was created by the predatory philanthropists that I'll talk about as a tool of world domination. And it is very close to succeeding in being that. 90% of the population to be eliminated and compressed, the remaining 10% compressed onto 1% of the world's land mass. Go online and look up Sri Lanka rewilding. There are lots more animals than there are people, lots more slugs and bugs and things that move around, fish and so on. And if you give each of them the same rights that human beings have, they win. So this crazy plan, and it is crazy, is designed to compress the remaining 10% of humanity into 1% of the world's land mass in what are called smart cities. Do you have smart cities yet in Sri Lanka? 15-minute cities, 10-minute cities, 5-minute cities. Right now, they're being built all over the world to compress and control the population. So the remaining 90% of the 99% of the planet's surface will be rewilded. No human being will ever set foot there, which is why agriculture is being destroyed worldwide, which is why people are being forced all over the world to move into cities which are high density open air concentration camps. Right now, people can leave the cities that they're being corralled into. Shortly, they will not be able to contest for you need to be able to spend at least 2 billion rupiah. Is that your currency, RS? And that is what proves what is your solution. I'll talk about the solution in a moment. But so if you read Agenda 21 or read my book, The Truth About Agenda 21, or Rosa Kore's The Green Mask, or any of the other careful examinations of Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030, and if you realize what the United Nations is planning on doing on September 23rd, which is adopting some horrifying document called the Pact for the Future. Now, many people have been focused on the World Health Organization pandemic treaty whole thing, but the World Health Organization is a subsidiary organization to the United Nations. The real threat and the real tyranny, as bad as WHO is, the real threat, the real tyranny comes from the central organ, which is determined to take over the world. That's not a good thing. So the Pact for the Future, to be adopted by the UN General Assembly on September 23rd of this year at the Summit of the Future, is the concretization of this destruction of any form of government that was mentioned in that excellent list, including representative democracy. And what comes out of the Pact for the Future, and I suggest you go online and read it, it's quite instructive. What comes out of it is absolute, utter tyranny with no purpose for an election, no purpose for local decision making, because all decision makings are centralized by the at and through the United Nations. My solution to the problem, and I'd like to actually share my screen with you if I may. Hold on, and I'll. Okay, this hideous reality, if you will. Let me just get what I need on the screen. Okay. That's not what I need on the screen. Just give me 1 second. I'm not finding that. I need to get here. Here we are. There is a website called Prevent Genocide 2030. Now I will share my screen. And I think I can share my screen. Can I share my
Yeah,
screen?
I made you co-host. So
okay, great. Nope, host has disabled participant screen sharing.
No. I have done it. I'll try again.
Okay.
I
Oh,
don't.
no, it still says, well, let me do it this way.
Hang on.
Okay.
You have co-host permissions, so you should be able to.
No,
Can I
it's
do it
coming up.
again? Hang on.
Try again. Ah,
You okay?
there we are. There we are. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can now.
You are now at preventgenocide2030.org. Now, we have issued a 10 million Patriot challenge to help get the United States out of the UN. Why is it important to anyone in Sri Lanka whether the United States leaves the UN? And by the way, right now, we have a 6-part challenge. We have a bill before the United States Congress called Disengaging Entirely from the UN Debacle Act of 2023. That act needs to be passed. And everything here is about pounding on the Congress of the United States to pass that act and get us out. Why do people let me stop sharing. Why do people in Sri Lanka care whether the United States gets out? Because the United Nations is driven by the United States. The UN's heart, its policy heart, is the predatory philanthropy resident in the United States. Started with the Rockefellers, the latest iteration is Gates and the Clinton Foundation and Soros, who originally was Hungarian but now is part of the United States hegemony. Peter Thiel, who was German and is now aligned with the United States, Zuckerberg, Bezos, these oligarchs, these profoundly wealthy control oligarchs have decided to reshape the world based on the John D. Rockefeller Sr. model that I'll talk about in a minute, in such a way that you are a slave or a servant, one or the other, and they are the neo-aristocrats who control everything. The 30% of the wealth that 1% of the population controls is being modified to be 100% of the wealth, and the 1% will be considerably smaller, but it will still be the same kind of disproportion. And you will either be dead or a slave or a servant. So sometimes okay. I have put 20 years of my life in coming to this point, and lost a husband to assassination and faced personal assassination in order to tell you this. It doesn't mean I'm right, but if I'm wrong, it's a serious misinterpretation based on massive research. I am a researcher. I am very careful so that what I say, I know, can be based on profound documentation. What I say I believe is my conclusion. And what I'm telling you is what I know, based on the explicit, clear, articulated statements of what the oligarchs, the control oligarchs, intend. If you go back to 2022 and read the statement issued jointly by the G20 from the meeting that was held in November in Bali, you will see the well-articulated plan for restated for the economic, social, emotional, and genetic destruction of humanity. How can they possibly do that? Because they're psychopaths, speaking as a psychiatrist. And let me remind you that normal people have trouble even understanding what a psychopath is. A psychopath has no affiliation to country, to religion, to family, to kith, to kin, to chick, or child. They have affiliation only to their own perceived needs and well-being. and they show you a mirror of what you want. They look like beneficent people, and they're not. They are barely human because they have no capacity to care about anyone or anything or any structure or any family or any value other than their own. Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab are perfect examples, as is Bill Gates, as are the other people of whom I was speaking.
And you describe our current leader as well perfectly.
Do you think that people are allowed to be put in those positions where they keep control of the controlled for the ultimate controllers? Do you think that they're allowed to be put in those positions if they're not? If they don't meet that characteristic? No, of course not. Either they're blackmailed to the point where they can be completely controlled, or they're willing to be completely controlled because they perceive it as their own self-interest. These people are completely amoral. And so, your leader, my leader, pick a leader. So the leadership has to come from us. In some countries, that's more dangerous than it is in other countries, but it's becoming very dangerous all through the world. As I said, my husband was assassinated, and there have been multiple attempts on my life, so far not successful. I understand the seriousness of this. Those pushing the agenda are either paid or played, yes, or they are willing to do anything at all to the rest of humanity because they see it as advantageous for themselves, despicable human beings. So, yeah, I know you have 4 questions. As you see, I can go on and on any one of them. So why don't you ask the next question, and perhaps it's time to go through my little slideshow, but perhaps not.
Yeah, let's go for the third question. And your second explanation is very relevant to us, what you did just now, and I can see what is happening and understand most of the participants here are multi-professional, and they too will understand what you're saying, given our personal experiences in Sri Lanka. So let's see the third question. You say that all the billionaire philanthropists are not real philanthropists, but that their actions are disguised to hoodwink the global population and lead us to our destruction. You say that health agencies, even the WHO, are captured by these rich people. Can you elaborate on this?
Indeed, I can. Again, I'm going to ask you to put the slide back up. I'm going to ask you to replace one of the words with another. Words are very important, after all. You say that the health agencies, even the WHO. No, please replace the word even with the word especially. The WHO is primarily funded by private interests. When the WHO, and I'll talk about the WHO in a few minutes, the WHO is, I wrote a book on the WHO called The Singing Pig. Now, I don't know if you have this expression in Sri Lanka, but we say you can put lipstick on it, but it's still a pig. And we also say, he whose bread I eat, his song I sing. And WHO is indeed a singing pig. You can dress it up and you can make it fancy. It is still an organization designed for medical tyranny and for depopulation. On World Population Day in October of 2011, was it? When statistically the 7 billionth person was born, and they decided, of course, that it was a girl, and of course that it was a Saudi Arabian girl. And so a child born after midnight was given diapers and formula. Babies don't need formula, they need breast milk. But anyway, There was much celebration made, and the current, at that time, head of the World Health Organization, Margaret Chan, who has now been replaced by Tedros Ghebreyesus. Tedros Ghebreyesus, by the way, is a known and confirmed genocidalist. He is not a medical doctor. He has a PhD, I believe, in political science. He was responsible, when he was the Minister of Health for 10 years in Ethiopia, for the intentional death, that's called genocide, of 2 million people who had the misfortune of belonging to a tribe that Ghebreyesus's tribe of origin had been historically warring with. And so he genocided that tribe through intentional policies involving starvation and cholera and some other unpleasant techniques. That's the person who sits at the head of the World Health Organization. That's the person whom the World Health Organization wants to give the power to declare a public health emergency of international concern, or a FAKE, anytime at his unquestionable decision, anywhere in the world, for any reason, real, imagined, or hypothetical. And at the declaration of a FAKE, what they want is for that Director General to have absolute power over the means of production, distribution, personal autonomy, medical treatment, travel, commerce, education, etc. But if that's not sufficient, and by the way, the Gates Foundation and Gavi, which have the same immunity as nations, as diplomats, and so on, those organizations are the principal funders of WHO, which may tell you why WHO has never met a vaccine that it didn't love. And I have in a document, a WHO document, this is not what I'll be talking about today, but I can share this with you. It's called the Immunization Implementation Agenda. It's an official document. And there is a chart which shows that by 2030, the World Health Organization will mandate the required use in every man, woman, and child, not only of every conventional vaccine that already exists, reformatted for the mRNA technology, by the way, but 500 novel vaccines. 500 novel vaccines will be jammed into your body, your child's body, your parents' body, your neighbor's body, because they say so. Now, if you consider the harm that's been done through excess mortality and illness and autoimmune disease and myocarditis and turbo cancers through one family of vaccines, the COVID vaccines, and you multiply that by 500, you've got a very, very effective depopulation system. But that's another story. The World Health Organization should, in my view, be called the World Holocaust Organization. So on on the World Population Day, Margaret Chan celebrated the birth of the baby. Yay, yay, little girl, Saudi Arabian 7 billion person. And she said, looking straight into the camera, now we've got to get really serious about population control. And they are really serious about population control. Does any of you doubt that the use of the mRNA and adenovirus DNA, adenovector DNA vaccines has caused a reproductive cataclysm all over the world? It was intended to do that. In 1974, the World Health Organization was tasked by the United Nations with creating a commission to find infertility vaccines that would not cure infertility, but would cause infertility. They broke it into two commissions. I've written extensively about this. They broke it into two committees, one for male infertility or sterility to be produced by vaccines, which was abandoned quickly. The decision makers were men, and one for female infertility. And they continued with that. And if you remember, the World Health Organization was convicted by the Philippines in the High Court of genocide, crimes against humanity, for the involuntary sterilization of at least, no one knows the real numbers, or we don't anyway, at least 3 million Filipinas, 3 million women, as women in Guatemala and Kenya and Nigeria and Thailand and India and country after country have been intentionally sterilized by the admixture of HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, with tetanus vaccines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know this, and yet we pretend that the World Health Organization is beneficent and that it is designed for our health, when every policy of the World Health Organization, despite the trappings of glittery robes, which it's wrapped in, the lipstick on the pig, every program of the World Health Organization at base is about either enslavement or depopulation. When you take away the pretty trappings, you see the real articulated agenda of depopulation and genetic manipulation. So let me go perhaps to my my slide show, if I may, and that will require sharing again, unless there are other questions about what I've said.
Yeah, we can. There's very good comments in the chat box as well,
Okay,
with reference being done in support of what you're saying, and so people can see those evidence there, and some of the issues that you're raising, I myself have had suspicions, particularly about the vaccination program and etc. Being a
Chula, I
man,
have a question.
yeah.
I have a question,
Ken?
Chula.
Yeah, okay, go for the.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a question coming up. Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Chula, shall I ask my question?
Yes, yes, go for it. Yes, yes, Ranjan, yeah.
Dr. Rima, you
Yes.
say the real intention of billionaires is to lead the global population to destruction.
Yes.
If the global population is destroyed, there won't be billionaires. So they are destroying.
It's a very
Just a minute. So they are destroying themselves. You see,
well,
so
of course.
this is self-contradictory.
Of course, it's irrational, and it is, as a psychiatrist, allow me to opine, it is batshit crazy. But then psychopaths tend to be very crazy. So let me share with you when. Let me stop sharing, because this is a very important point. Thank you for the question. When the head of state, who was my patient, said, it's almost time for the great culling to begin, I said, what do you mean by culling? And she said, culling of the useless eaters. I said, at that time, I had never heard the term useless eater. Useless eater is a term that was a term of art in pre-Nazi Germany, and I've written about that as well. They had a death program for defective people who were German, not Jewish, not gypsies, etc. And so before Hitler came to power. So I said, well, your enormous wealth, this is one of the wealthiest people in the world, by the way. I said, your enormous wealth comes from having vast numbers of people to sell tremendous amounts of shit to. If you don't have vast numbers of people to sell tremendous amounts of shit to, how are you going to maintain your wealth? Which is exactly the question that was just asked. And she said, and I quote, the mercantile era which began in the 14th century with the Hanseatic League in Germany, is coming to an end. We are moving to the neo-feudal era. There will be us, the neo-feudal aristocrat at the top, surrounded by our servants and servitors, and below them, our technicians. That requires only approximately 10% of the world's current population. Since we will own all resources, we do not need mercantile activity. So I asked the same question. Wait, how are they going to stay billionaires? Well, they are going to stay neo-feudal oligarchs. And that is their plan. Now, if that seems bizarre and crazy to you, it's because it's bizarre and crazy. And this has nothing to do with money. How many more planes and estates and pleasure yachts does one person have the ability to use than these people already have? This is about a level of emptiness, internal emptiness, that can never be filled, of course, but that they are crazy enough to think that ultimate control will fill. They are wrong, but their mental health is not my issue. The survival of the planet, its people, its resources is my issue. If you look at the totally insane plan called One Health, Sri Lanka is threatened by One Health. So is every other country in the world. One Health means giving absolute total control of every living and non-living resource on the planet to the World Health Organization, an agency of the ultimate control organization called the United Nations. And by the way, I would commend to you a quick read of the United Nations Charter and the Constitution of the World Health Organization. You will see when you read the United Nations Charter that it is a war document. There is no provision for peace. You will see when you read the World Health Organization Constitution that it is a world tyranny charter. There is no provision for health. That's their real intent. That is what they were formulated for. That is what they are moving towards. And the core of that is a genetic and social and economic enslavement of the small number of people who are able to remain. The United States is the core of this evil, not the United States people. I'm not the core of this evil. You know, my neighbors are not the core of this evil. But the predatory philanthropists who laid out this program and have articulated it for us to read are the core of this problem. So when the United States leaves the World Health Organization, when 10 million patriots pick up their freedom mouse, this is a freedom mouse, the most powerful tool for freedom that we have, and they pick up their freedom mouse and pound on the United States Congress to exit by passing this bill and overriding the veto that it will get from whoever sits behind the desk in the Oval Office. Once that happens, and they will respond to our pressure, they always do, the entire world tyranny system collapses. They'll come back, they'll try something else, as they did when the League of Nations collapsed, because the United States refused to join it, by the way. But that gives us a chance to rebuild the destruction that they've wrought for 140 years. So does that answer the question? I would like to share my site. The website, no, actually the website you need to go to is preventgenocide2030.org. I'm not focusing on the Dr. Rima Institute. My work is treating the body politic and saving its life, by the way, with your help. So it's preventgenocide2030.org. And there's the documents there are WHO and UN documents, not my documents, their documents. So you can read for yourself how profoundly crazy this is. By the way, never call them elite. They're rich. They have fancy planes and clothes and really expensive designer suits and shoes. And they're batshit crazy. They're scum. They're not elite. You are the elite. You are educated, you are capable of thought, and you are capable of impact. You are the elite. They are scum. Let us be clear about that. So, preventgenocide2030.org. Yes. So, oh, and I have a Substack. I'll put that in here. It's worthwhile, and sometimes it's amusing, and it's always informative. It's called the Dr. Rima Truth Reports, PORTS.substack.com. It is free because I don't believe in putting life-saving information behind a paywall.
Dr. Rima, I can actually post all those links when we send the video link.
Oh,
So
great.
send it to me then, because someone is asking for your book as well. So if you have any links for those.
I tell you what, for those of you who have a US address and can take the action on the thank you page, where once you've taken the action and banged on the US Congress, you get a download link for the WHO Singing Pig book. But I will be happy to provide it to you after the show. I'll send you the link.
Send so I will circulate to everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's focus on what we're talking. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone can save this chat. Right. So unless that's an excellent question. But the answer is they're changing the system. They don't need the mercantile activity any longer. They're going to own us as slaves from the DNA out. So they'll have what they need, they think. And they are crazy. You realize that this cannot work, but consider the consequences when it fails. Okay, so
you got to share your slides again because
good.
It's come down here.
Okay, so can you see my screen? I will move this off to the side.
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Good. Let me make sure this is working. So we're going to be talking today about the United Nations, not the WHO. That's a distraction. That's a pimple on the ass of the monster. The monster is the United Nations, and it is, I hate to tell you, an all-American Death Star. I've told you about the 10 million Patriot Challenge. If you are in the United States, if you have a US address, if you know people in the United States, tell them about this issue and tell them that we need to get the United States out of the UN in order, literally, to have a chance of saving the world. Sun Tzu, 3,500 years ago, said strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Our side is a side, the health freedom side, is a side that acts tactically and doesn't think strategically, which is why 20 years ago in 2004, I said to my husband, a brilliant strategic analyst, we need to close our practice and bring strategy to the battle against the globalist destroyers. Our strategic goal is to exit the UN because it is the mechanism of total global conquest. And it's now constituting itself to be a legal authority with all power vested in an unassailable dictator known as the Secretary General of the United Nations. That's what Pact for the Future is designed to do, September 23rd of this year. Our tactical focus is that fighting any other battle, whether it's fighting the sexualization of children, or fighting the judicial restructuring, or fighting the destruction of agriculture. These are all very serious problems, but they are all subsidiary, because your country and my country must withdraw from the UN and all related structures, including the international health regulations, the WHO, the IMF, all of it. My husband, before he was murdered, said, informed consent is the defining issue of the 21st century. Who owns your body? If they own your body, you're a slave. In 2004, my husband and I closed our practice of drug-free medicine and psychiatry to help cure the body politic of what might be a terminal illness. This is the body politic. It's us. It's you. It's me. It's the Sri Lankan population. It's the population of Vanuatu. It's the people. And this is the fundamental issue. Who owns your body? Is it the playground of the would-be control oligarchs, or is it not? There's only one question. Who owns your body? A political body is terribly ill. The disease has been introduced from outside, not from the inside, and it's disseminated a multi-system and multifocal allopathic, a multi-system and multifocal disease. The treatment, symptom suppression, fighting these individual battles, is going to fail in the way that allopathic medicine generally fails to cure underlying problems, because it does not address the underlying cause of the illness. It may increase comfort, but it cannot forestall the terminal course of the disease. Holistic treatment uses a strategic and symptoms-focused approach, a strategic approach, identifying and focusing on the underlying cause of the illness. That offers promise for the successful treatment and cure of the disease. I was asked in April of 2023 to present at an American Freedom Alliance conference, which they called World War III, the early years. And I said, no, we're already in a world war for total domination and destruction of the world as we know it. The United Nations is the Death Star. The WHO is a tool of the Death Star. There are 4 levels of control. The United Nations is the one that we can actually see, and it acts as the death machine. It is controlled by the financial system, which is controlled, it is controlled by, yes, the financial system, which is represented here as the Bank for International Settlement, the money system. And above that, there's a group of forces that want to take apart the world as we know it. Some say it's Luciferian, some say this, some say that. I don't know what it is because I don't have access to it. The one that we are about to be destroyed by is the United Nations. And so we need to get out of that. Sun Tzu, in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. And what is weak is the United Nations control right now. They're working to strengthen it. Therefore, getting our countries out of that organization is critical. What does every dictator want? They want unlimited dominance, power, wealth, adulation, adoration, obedience, and generally youth, health, and lifespan. They want to live forever. The control oligarchs of the moment, including Peter Thiel, who believe that they can live forever by converging themselves with a machine. That's quite crazy. They want unlimited infantile gratification. And Sun Tzu again says an evil enemy will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes. The question was earlier, aren't they destroying themselves? Oh, yes. But since they are psychopaths, they don't understand what being fully human means. Not because they're reptilians. We have no evidence that they are. That's just a story that's been told to us. But because they cannot love. And as people who cannot love, they will burn their own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes if we allow them to. We are committed to our survival, we people, whether we're from Sri Lanka or the United States or the Ukraine. We want to live and thrive and survive and see our children prosper and do well. The enemy, and they are an enemy, is committed to our destruction. A kingdom, says Sun Tzu, that has once been destroyed can never come back again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. And we are talking about intentional, malignant destruction. How is this total betrayal possible by every nation in the world? How did they all sign on at the Rio Convention? Rio Summit? How did they all sign on at the UN in 2015 when the Pope brought us Agenda 2030? How is that possible? Agenda 21, every medical system in the world has been corrupted and controlled to be a death system with the COVID jabs. Every media outlet in the world has been propagandized. We didn't have a pandemic. We had a propagandemic. The deaths didn't start until the jabs were rolled out. We know that now. I was saying that at the time. That was said to be misinformation, but it was actual information. Every public health agency in the world is controlled. How is that? And why is this not working? There we go.
Yeah.
Why were the jab danger signals ignored? Well, you're familiar perhaps with the Maguire principle. That's where we need to look. Every aspect of what we're contending against today, both that which we understand and which is still hidden, has been envisioned and planned, carefully financed, beautifully, brilliantly financed, and implanted throughout society, socially, educationally, medically, through public health, governmental, and international manipulation over generations. We're talking about 140 years, starting with the planning of and continuing with the dynasty of one family. This is the senior progenitor and the second generation of that family, John D. Rockefeller Sr. and John D. Rockefeller Jr. This photograph was taken approximately 1915. Now, Rockefeller University, Rockefeller Foundation, the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, Philanthropy for an Interdependent World, yay, the Rockefeller Foundation, Innovation for the Next 100 Years, Green Geeks, the USAID program, Rockefeller Foundation partnering with the next generation and iteration of this controlled philanthropy, predatory philanthropy, Bill and Melinda Gates, et cetera, et cetera. This organization, the John D. Rockefeller Sr. Program, comes from the brilliant mind of a crazy man. John D. Rockefeller Sr. was the founder of the Standard Oil Company. He was the creator of all of these institutions. He was the world's first billionaire, and he was a visionary. He was much richer than the Rothschilds, much richer than John Jacob Astor, than the Vanderbilts, than any of the robber barons. He was the richest person in the world. And he was enamored of a new science, of course, a pseudoscience, a new science called eugenics, brought about by Francis Galton of Stanford University. And in 1913, Rockefeller Foundation was created, quote, to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. Rockefeller Foundation, by the way, Rockefeller was responsible for approximately 700,000 people, mostly women, being involuntarily sterilized in the United States. He thought that was a good start. Rockefeller Foundation was initiated with $100 million capital fund in 1913. That amount of money in 1913 was pretty much unimaginable, and another 25 million in 1917. And then the money just kept rolling in. It was devoted to the, quote, advancement of knowledge and research as the chief tool, according to the 1936 annual report. But remember that knowledge and research devoted to eugenics, to the improvement of the human race, was what the core of this was. And Rockefeller, as you know, was the basically controlling intelligence of the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm sure you already know the story of the capture by Rockefeller of medicine. You may or may not know about the capture of public health and governance. We'll get there in a moment. The money just kept rolling and rolling and rolling, all kinds of big donations, billions of dollars. In current money, we're talking about almost $7 billion of startup capital. As you know, pretty significant amount of money. Philanthropy. The Rockefeller Enterprise's vast wealth was used under the guise of, and this is so important, doesn't matter what pretty words you put on it, but if it's a guise of humanitarian interests to create global full spectrum dominance, you're looking at a control mechanism through predatory philanthropy. Rockefeller understood that he was going to have to reshape society, and he used his vast wealth and the vast wealth of his friends, who formed the equivalent of what Bill Gates called the Good Club, same deal, to basically take over the world for their own psychopathic interests. It was disguised as philanthropy, but they developed a complex infiltration and control system via the direct establishment and funding of institutions and through supporting causes. For instance, Rockefeller funded the suffragette movement in the United States. He didn't really care whether women voted or not. He cared that he could destroy the family by getting women political power and getting them into the workforce and out of the home. He supported training and placing scientists and policymakers, promoting promising players. One of the promising players who was on his payroll at the eugenics institutes, because it was the Rockefeller Foundation and John D. Rockefeller Sr. and Jr. who brought eugenics to Germany. They taught the Germans the idea of improving the race, and they funded and set up the Kaiser Wilhelm Institutes in Munich and Berlin. Obviously, this was before Hitler, because they were called the Kaiser Wilhelm Institutes. And one of the promising players on their payroll was a young doctor named Adolf Eichmann. Very, very promising player. You may have heard of the work that he did during the Second World War. They used marketing, they marketed political, economic, and social engineering and scientific social engineering. They supported studies, schools, and projects in the natural sciences, social sciences, medical sciences, arts and humanities, public health, international relations, agriculture, education. Revolutions and wars. The Russian Revolution was paid for by John D. Rockefeller. The Chinese Revolution, Mao's revolution, was paid for by the Rothschilds. The great capitalists of the world don't buy what they don't want. They don't care about systems of government. They care about ultimate control. This is about a revolution of which the Marxist revolutions were only an intermediate step. They supported projects in eugenics. After, we'll talk about this, the support for eugenics in Germany during, before, and after the Second World War came from these sources. During the Second World War, when the United States was in an active conflict with Germany, the Rockefeller friends were funding the eugenics program in Germany. And after the war, 3,500 displaced scholars, eugenics, quote, scientists, were brought to the United States under the auspices not of Operation Paperclip, but of the Rockefeller Foundation. And they were given jobs at the University of Chicago and the New School and the Cold Spring Harbor Institute. And they were scattered throughout the country to continue their eugenics work. Involuntarily sterilizing people is a big part of this deal. It can be done through vaccines. It can be done through surgical procedures. It can be done through drugs. It can be done through ivermectin. Yes, population control and depopulation is a major goal. Disease creation and dissemination, especially if you're the pharmaceutical industry and you make a lot of money from disease creation and dissemination. Oh yes, genetic engineering. We're right in the middle of genetic engineering for total control of the population. Vaccines with CRISPR technology in them are here. International law and public policy to support this. But in the introductory comments, we heard about laws being made to make predatory legal. Yes, indeed. Diminished rational thinking skills are very important. You don't want a thinking, questioning, opposing population. Education was one of the important things that Rockefeller took over and supported to dilute and diminish the thinking skills, the rational decision-making skills of students. I don't know what's happened to Sri Lankan education, but education in the United States and in Europe has become a sexual training ground for continuing trauma, but very little cognitive skill. Pedophilia and normalization of sexual aberration is a real current problem.
Dr. Rima, there are few
Yes.
people waiting to ask questions. And I think you got so much content that we can probably have another session some other day. Particularly now
Okay.
you are focusing on education, which is an important part for us as well. What do you think? We can probably let people ask questions and then continue at a later date.
Okay, sure.
Is that okay? Because we normally try to conclude by about 2 hours, because some people are, it's right at the other end of the world. So that is why. You got quite a few more to go, hasn't it? Is that okay with you?
Go for it.
Yeah, okay. So I think you have heard quite a lot of things from Dr. Rima, and it's really an eye-opener that for all of us. And I think it's good to have a little discussion and conclude, but we will probably reorganize another session, more focused, because now she was going to talk about education, and also maybe we should elaborate a little bit more about the vaccination programs, because there's evidence also that some of the vaccinations or their side effects were hidden and so on. So first of all, Lasil has raised her hand. Lasil, yes. Lasil?
Yeah, thank you, Ula. Thank you, Dr. Rima. It's so interesting to listen to you, and I'm very happy. Actually, when I was listening to you, to my mind, there was a issue that I did.
Having trouble hearing you. Could you speak a little closer to the mic?
I'm sorry. It was a very interesting presentation. Actually, you spoke of your husband's death, right? And in Sri Lanka, there was a gentleman, Professor Senaka Bibike. Actually, he was considered as a prophet of modern medicine, and he was responsible with another Dr. Vikramasinghe, who was in politics, to draw up if I remember right, the what it is, national medicine program policy, and he had done a human service, established a pharmaceutical corporation, because he said all those drugs could be manufactured here, and you don't have to, import all that. So it came to a situation, he was later recruited by the World Health Organization, and he was serving in Africa. It was, he died. They say it was very suspicious, under suspicious circumstances, only he had passed away. Until now, nobody knows how he died. So I was just wondering, as you said, that there are billions of dollars, particularly in the medical trade, and I was asking Chula whether it was some similar situation where they even assassinated a person like Dr. Bibile, Professor Bibile, in a place unknown in Guyana, in South Africa. So could it be something like what you said about, to eliminate, in the sense, who are doing a human service to the country? Could that be something similar, Doctor?
I had a great deal of trouble hearing your actual question. You talked about someone who died under suspicious circumstances, and then what? Could you restate the question? You were breaking up badly.
Can I explain that a little bit more? What he was telling is Professor Senak Wibile was actually a professor who were in the same medical school I studied. So I know a little bit about the background. He's a
Okay.
pharmacological professor, and he was working on about the drug trade, and particularly not to use trade names, and also use generic names instead, and also those drugs can be manufactured and so on. So I'm not fully aware of the situation where he died, but we all know that he died in a very unusual situation, and even in Sri Lanka, even today, in the medical school, we didn't know exactly how he died. But we still admire what he's trying to do for Sri Lankan population in relation to drug industry, particularly the pharmaceutical industry. And maybe it was capped, and that's very possible. That is the question that La Silva
That's
asked.
entirely possible. I don't know the details of his death. I do know that people get killed by these folks all of the time. I do know that my husband was murdered. I do know that I looked up out of my window one day. I have a security gate over my doors and windows. And I looked up and there was a guy, it was 110 degrees out, which is probably about, oh, I don't know, let's say 40, 41 degrees. And it was late at night, very hot here. And there was a guy in a hoodie with a black ski mask on, with a gun in one hand and a piece of paper in the other with my name on it in big block letters. And he was trying to pull the gate off the wall and screaming, "Let me in, I have to kill you." And so I got the idea that that was probably something hostile and violent. I called the police, their 911 emergency number, and they could hear him screaming, "Let me in, I have to kill you." And it took the police 2 hours and 45 minutes to get here, which says that they were perfectly happy to have him kill me. Those things do happen. He didn't succeed. Those things do happen. My husband certainly was murdered. Other people get murdered when they oppose the hegemony, and the pharmaceutical industry is unbelievably ruthless because if you think about it, maintaining disease when disease could be cured is pretty ruthless, wouldn't you say? Causing disease so that you can then maintain it is pretty ruthless. And that's not even direct murder. That's just how allopathic medicine operates, right? The public thinks we cure things. We know that we suppress symptoms. That's just how it goes.
Right. Thank you for that answer, Dr. Rima. And yes, next, Kirti. Kirti.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. First of all, let me thank you. That was a fascinating presentation. There was so much information which really caught my attention. It's unbelievable. I was really touched by the subject drug-free medicine. But of course, I know that we don't have the time to talk about it. The key issue that I picked up is that there's a big problem throughout the world. I fully agree with everything you presented. My question is, perhaps you won't be able to answer it today, maybe the next time. What is the solution?
Indeed. The
So,
solution is very, very simple and quite complex. The solution, as profound solutions usually are, turns out that any country in the world can leave the United Nations. And the solution is leaving the United Nations. Any country in the world can leave the United Nations upon the writing of a letter and the signing of a letter by the head of state, president, king, premier, whoever, prime minister, whoever occupies the position of head of state. They write a letter. The letter says, I'm not in your club anymore. My country's not in your club anymore. Signed, head of state. In fact, that happened. Indonesia left the United Nations, I think it was 1969, right? Sukarno left the United Nations. A year later, there was a revolution and they had Suharto, and he came back and said, oh, we're back in the United Nations. Any country can leave. What it takes is the political will to force the oligarch or the tool of the oligarch who's been put in that control position to do it, which is why in the United States, with this bill now before both houses of Congress, we can, with 10 million people riding their freedom mouse, force the Congress of the United States to make a policy flip. I've done it before. I've absolutely spearheaded the thrust to change U.S. policy. Other people have done it. I could give you examples of that. The point is that we can maneuver our countries so that the popular will gets them out of the United Nations. The easiest and most significant, because of the power relationship inside the United Nations and outside of it, is the United States. So I urge you, if you know anybody in the United States, if you have an address in the United States, go to preventgenocide2030.org and use the tools there, because when we have created the political momentum to demand that the Congress of the United States do this, it will happen. Why? Because they're only there. They're puppets. They're sock puppets. Somebody's hand is up their ass, moving their mouth. They're sock puppets. We understand that. And I don't care what they believe. I care what they do. So these sock puppets are there to keep control of the control. If we tell them through our peaceful political will, riding our freedom mouse, and we tell them that they're about to lose control of the control, they will do the policy flip that we are demanding. They will pass the disengaging entirely from the United Nations debacle Act of 2023. When they do that, the United States will leave the United Nations. Other countries will then be able to come along like ducklings in back of the mama duck. What that will mean is that the hegemony of the world tyranny is broken. They may allow the entire system to collapse. They may try to keep it limping along. I don't know. I can't predict that. But I can tell you that the fatal blow to the total destruction of humanity, which has been laid out. I didn't get to the point where I was going to share those documents with you, but they're public documents. Operation Lockstep, 2010. The entire body of information and direction that is the international health regulations, et cetera, it's all laid out very clearly. And so that all falls apart when the United States leaves the United Nations. The United Nations was conceived and created to be the death machine that it's about to finish becoming as humanity is subjugated and made subservient to its neo-feudal masters unless we stop it. You cannot stop it by solving the subsidiary problems like sexualization of children, which is a tool for this subjugation. You must stop it by killing the monster, and the monster is the United Nations. We have the chance to pull the United States out, and that will take the heart out of the monster.
Can I ask some related questions? Of course, I'm not expecting you to answer them today, but maybe the next time. Sri Lanka is a very small country. How can we contribute to this process is one question. The other question is, I'm a little bit concerned that unless there's a coordinated effort to take the power away from UNO in a huge way, there could be a vacuum, or there could be all kinds of issues going on for many, many decades, years perhaps. So that's a worry.
It's a very, very important questions. The first question is, the most important thing that you can do is use every pressure option that you have to pass this bill in the United States. If you don't live, you've got the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. I don't know whether you just
but I don't live in the USA.
You don't live in the US, but you know people who live in the United States. You need to share this information with people who either live there or know people who live there. As a small country, you have a diaspora to England, to France, to the United States, to Canada, to God knows where, right? You have people all over the world. And that's what tends to happen with small countries that have skilled populations. But you also have people in Sri Lanka who have connections, academic connections, family connections, other connections. We are a global community, in fact, through the internet. We have the capacity to educate and to motivate people across national borders. And it is critically important for all of us anywhere in the world to understand the damage and destruction of this organization that robes itself in beauty and is actually quite horrendous. Now, there are good men and women in all of these organizations who have not been read into the program. But as they rise in the program, they get read into it, and some of them stay and some of them leave. Those who stay are no longer good men and women. That's a different story. But we have communication capacity, and we need to enlighten our colleagues and friends and families and say, no, the jabs are bad. The jabs are part of a depopulation effort. The programs are bad, even though they come with lots of money. No, this is not good, because the programs are woven into every aspect of our lives, especially in smaller countries. And it's important to be able to say, nah, it's, great money, but no, we don't want your control, because none of those programs come without profound control, do they? So that's really important. It's cognitive, it's practical, and it's also communication that is necessary. Will there be a power vacuum? Of course there'll be a power vacuum. Will we need to reformat our systems that have been woven and controlled and shaped by this monster? Of course. That's when the hard work begins. But unless and until, and by the way, countries used to form alliances, and the alliances would break down, and they'd have treaties, and they'd break the treaties. That happens. But we don't exactly have a world of peace because of the quote peacemaking of the United Nations, do we? We still have wars of opportunity and predatory wars and revolutions and blah, blah, blah. And they're all maneuvered by the globalists, right? Ukraine doesn't look like a peaceful place right now. The Mideast doesn't look like a peaceful place right now. Somalia doesn't look particularly peaceful. Those all serve the globalists. So yeah, we have power vacuums now. We just have this horrible globalist organization telling us that they're going to be in charge of everything, and they've already done a pretty bad job. That's a very partial answer.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much. Now, a lot to think about.
I'm going to plug my headphones in. Just a moment. Can you hear me?
yeah, we can do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay.
That's good. So
Once the dogs start barking, the headphones are essential.
just one thing to say that United Nations funded mostly by the United States. That's right, isn't it? More than 50% of the funding comes from United States. So as you say, if the Congress pulls out, then there's no funding for the United Nations to run as it is, isn't it?
Yes, and one of the things you'll see if you go to preventgenocide2030.org is a legal memorandum. What it makes, I think, abundantly clear is that for the United States and for every other country in the world, including Sri Lanka, membership in the United Nations is based on a fraud. It is an illegal act. Now, one of the things that we're telling in our letter to the Congress that we're hoping 10 million people will send, one of the things we're telling the members of Congress is, you are, by not voting for this act to leave the United Nations, you are participating in a criminal fraud against the Constitution of the United States, the people of the United States, and violation of your oath of office. Those are called legally within our constitutional system high crimes and misdemeanors. And something called congressional immunity does not protect members of Congress against high crimes and misdemeanors, also known as treason. Consequently, it is in their best interest to pass this act and override the veto that will come from the Oval Office, because they are criminally liable if they do not. It is also true for Sri Lanka that membership in the United Nations is based on a fraud, a constitutional fraud if you have a constitution, a foundational document fraud if you have foundational documents the way Sweden does. They don't have a constitution. This is important to understand, and I suggest you go to Prevent Genocide 2030 and read the legal memo there, whatever country you live in. Your country is in a fraudulent, illegal relationship with this club of countries. It is a country club. It is not a club. And anything your country is doing on the basis of the obligations that are presented as treaty obligations is in fact a criminal fraud. That's pretty interesting. Whether you have a common law system or you don't, whether you follow the Napoleonic Code system of laws or you don't, whether you have a completely different system, you are involved in the United Nations on a criminally fraudulent basis. That's pretty interesting. And that gives us a tremendous amount of potential under both international law and I suspect national law as well. That's pretty cool. That's worth pounding on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rima. Any other questions? I think we got a lot more to talk about and then carry on. What I suggest is, because I think we are nearly coming to 2 hours, what I'm suggesting is that I will be circulating your video at the end of the day to everyone, and it's open, so anybody can log in and have a look. but that in return, they can send me questions directed to you, so we can collect all the questions and redesign the next presentation to answer some of those questions. Because for example, Sri Lankan point of view, we are in a kind of oligarchy state at the moment. And I think this psychopathic kind of ruling situation is already in. And there's an election campaign that is going on, which seems to be infiltrated by foreign forces and not really done by the so-called leaders who are appearing. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about, and then we can catch up on another day, answering those questions that people raise, because I communicate all the time, and they can write to me, and then I'll put all that together, and then maybe you can design a way of answering all those in a
Certainly.
presentation.
I just want to make one quick comment, if I may. The oligarchic system that you have in Sri Lanka, which is about to get a whole lot worse when the oligarchic system is the United Nations, as it will be after the Pact for the Future is adopted, and all local or national rule is subservient to UN rule, which is what Pact for the Future does. Your oligarchs, like our oligarchs, were installed to destroy your country and bring you to the point of this subservience through the New World Order, through the United Nations total hegemony. That's where we're going. And the damage, the collateral damage, is your DNA, your population, your social structure, your family structure, and your culture. These are all targets. So it's that serious, and we're all facing this together, not just the US, not just Sri Lanka, but the entire global population, with our DNA as the central target. Our DNA is our past, it is our present, it is our future, it is our species definition, and it is being destroyed intentionally. Klaus Schwab has said that by the year 2030, all human reproduction will take place outside the human body, because we will no longer be capable of reproduction. We have a battle that we need to fight, and we need to win this one, or humanity is no longer existent.
Thank you so much for today's presentation, Dr. Rima. And you have imposed quite a lot of things that we have to really think about, and then take it forward from there. And as the research that we see and what is published is biased, because the publication process itself is biased, and we don't hear the other side of the coin very often. So thank you for bringing this up again. And anything else from the others, anybody want to say? And if you have any questions to ask, and please send it back to me, so that I will collate it all, send it to Dr. Pri, to Rima, and then we will get the next session organized in a way to answer questions that is more kind of suitable locally. Say, like, if we leave the United Nations, what will happen to Sri Lanka, kind of thing. So I'll just put my address in here, everybody's, if they want. Admin at srilankaleads.com. That's my, it is, yeah. Admin at srilankaleads, one word.com. That's what it is, yeah. So thank you. So we actually learn and educate each other. That's our plan. So we help people decide more logically. That's what we are doing. Great. Thank you very much for today. Thank you. Shall we stop there today? Thank you. So I'll end the meeting now.